Part 2. Let's discuss plant medicines. I was in New York in 2012 and I was losing my mind because it's a pretty intense place, and ended up taking a trip to Peru for 3 months, check out Machu Picchu and what have you. And then I'd arranged to meet with a guy, Jim, who owns a retreat. It's called the Hummingbird Retreat. It's on the border of Brazil and Iquitos, about 60 miles into the Amazon. There's no electricity or anything. The only way to get in there is by plane or boat up the Amazon, which I did. Pink dolphins and shit, very cool. I went there to learn about ayahuasca and the plant medicines. And people from all around the world with addictions and issues, drugs, what have you, are going there to clean their system, their vessels out. And it's a shortcut, really. It's pretty intense. But I was just there to observe and got to partake, and I did about 20 odd journeys, and it changed my life for sure. Plant medicines like weed, for example, it's a spirit, and people use like marijuana incorrectly, really. I mean, I believe in its medicinal use, but ultimately the plant it's intelligent, and most people, they smoke weed and they're tapping into the energy and the intelligence of that spirit, like alcohol, spirits, but the negative ones, right? So they open up a gateway within your chakras to allow in entities which then mess with you. In Arabic, alcohol means soul eating, so it speaks for itself. Weed, on the other hand, a lot of people get addicted to it. I don't believe so, but what they're actually getting addicted to is the intelligence of the plant. So when you're in a room full of people, they're all smoking weed, and you smoke weed, you sit there and the plant will then give you insight and intuition as to what everyone's motivations are and what they're doing and what they're trying to do. Like, she's with him, but he likes her, and she wants to cheat, and she's interested in his money, and they can see all this kind of going on in the room, and it gives you insight to how to control or manipulate people. And a lot of people do it out of fear because it gives them that extra boost. On the negative side, because plants have both light and dark, as we do, on the negative side, the plant can, some people get really paranoid. And weed is just like poking you at a place where you're in fear of being judged. So you sit there, you smoke your joint, and you think everyone's talking about you, but they're not. You're just afraid of everyone talking about you and judging you, so you get stuck in this little loop. And once you conquer that fear, you won't get paranoid anymore. And you'll probably end up smoking a lot more weed because you'll be like, wow, it makes me feel so good because I'm not paranoid, and it gives me insight to what's going on around me. So you can use it for positive and negative ways. With ayahuasca, it's actually 2 roots of 2 different plants, and they've got to be 6 years old for them to actually distill or get the DMT to activate on our systems. And DMT is produced in the body naturally, but it's only released twice. It's released when you're born, and it's also released when you die. So it's a gateway to the other side. Now, the shamans and the indigenous people of the past, they figured this out 7,000 years ago. So they've been using this plants, to access the spirits in the spiritual realm. And if someone's depressed or has an addiction, they can then go and speak to that spirit and tell it to leave. But with ayahuasca, and the purpose of the pain and the throwing up of going through the process is so that you value what you do with your body. And there are people like myself and other practitioners that can remove these entities, but they come back if you invite them back in. I'll give you an example. I was working with a guy on mushrooms, and I asked him, what's your issue? And he said, anger. He's got this uncontrollable anger. And I said, well, that's my specialty. So we did the mushrooms, and I said, you ready for this? And, I basically dragged this angry spirit out of his vessel and brought it up and then threw it up. And he was shocked. And he was like, "Oh, you need to do some work." And I said, no, that's your shit, not mine. So I've learned how to do this along the way. And that's another side. We'll get to that when I discuss mushrooms and that part of the journey. But for ayahuasca, it's like the mother of all the plants. So on this retreat, when you arrive, you have to drink a litre of tobacco fluid water to cleanse out and kill everything it can before you start working with the plant. And then you do specific diets for the different plants. So I work with Ayahuasca, which is a plant for depression. And I did a specific diet from the shaman that showed me how to connect with the plant. And then later, after 9 days of doing this diet, you take the ayahuasca and you can meet these spirits. And it's quite phenomenal. I mean, some of the experiences I had 20 different journeys, were just incredible. You can ask it anything, and it's connected to the intelligence of the universe. So it's got everything you want to know. I had one guy there. He'd never experienced love, and he was a real smart guy. And he'd do projects for people for 20 grand a pop, and then go and blaze up and blow his brains out with coke and alcohol. And he was there, and he asked the plant for what love meant. And this blew my mind, because the next day, the shaman then, in the discourse, goes through and dissects what you experience so you can understand what's going on. Anyway, this guy said he wanted to understand love. So in his vision, he was beamed into his mother when he was born, and got to experience the elation and the feelings that his mother was feeling when he was born. And then at the same time, beamed him into his father to experience what his father was experiencing when he was born. And then popped him back into his own self to witness and see how his parents were reacting. And that gave him clarity and understanding. Even though his parents were probably fighting later on and split up and da-da-da-da, he came back to the truth of his birthing and what it's all about. And then this, it gets better. I'm on the other side of the room doing my thing, and I see him get up and take his clothes off, and I'm like, what the fuck's this guy about to do? And he goes outside, and as soon as he gets outside, it just starts pissing down. And I was like, whoa. And the next day he explained this whole story, and I said, mate, you got to write a book. People need to know about this kind of thing, you know. It was pretty mind-blowing. And there were other experiences. There was this young guy who had 2 or 3 journeys, and he wasn't really getting much from it, and he was so angry, and he was like, can you just give me something? And he came and sat down next to me in my journey, and he popped into my vision, and I was like, fuck, how'd you do that? And then he started talking to me, and I was like talking to him, but we weren't talking, we were just communicating through thought. And he was a powerful young fella, because he was pulling on my energy so much I had to cut it off. And then after the journey and the next day we had a chat, and I said, bro, that was intense. And he was just blown away, because he just kept wanting to talk and connect in the spiritual. Because understand, when you're up there, you don't communicate with words, you communicate with pictures. And that's how the animals communicate as well. So if you can calm your mind and still your emotions, you can send pictures to animals, cats and dogs, and they can understand what you're trying to say. So, you've got a lot of people out there that love their pets and shit, but they're not really connecting. There's just unconditional love coming from the animal. But they've got ways to communicate, as you know, they bark and fucking bite and all that shit. But with ayahuasca, that's a shortcut to cleaning out your temple or your system. And I asked to meet my guides, and I had this old guy with a white beard come in, and I looked around the room to see if anyone else could see him, and I was just like, shit. And then another guy came in, and they were both standing in front of me, And they said, what do you want to know? And I was like, fuck, you guys know everything. And I thought for a second, and I said, no, I don't want to know anything, because otherwise it spoils the surprise of life, right? And then they left, and I just asked myself, why the fuck am I here? Because I'm not here to make money and do all that kind of carry on. And they showed me a path. It was a golden path that went as far as it could go in one direction, and the same behind me. And I was standing on it. And in that moment, I realized that there is no future and there is no past. There is only what you're doing in this current moment. And that simple communication left me pondering for weeks. Anyway, there were other ones where I asked to meet one of my spirit guides, like animal totems. And the jaguar came in, which is quite a strong animal guide. But it scared the shit out of me. I mean, I was sitting down waiting for something to happen after taking a cup. You know, the shaman sits at the front on a little stool, and he chants a whole lot of words and blesses the ayahuasca before you drink it. And you all sit down in a room with a mat, a bucket, and some toilet paper to keep yourself clean. But yeah, I waited. I sat back, and then this black spirit or a shadow just whistled past me, and I was like, fuck. And then another one again, and then it started focusing right on my third eye, and I was like trying to fight it off, like, fuck, get away, what is it? And then after about an hour of being on my fours just pushing, it slowly retreated, and then I found the spirit of the jaguar inside my body, and I was like observing myself, but I could feel all the hair on my face so acutely, like really sensitive, and the smells and the sounds, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And woke up, and the shaman had come over and cleared more space and explained to me, you have to have quite a strong spirit to have that one come in, but it's now a protector totem for me. Yeah, that was quite intense. But understand, with the animal totems, they come and go as you need them throughout your life, and they all have different abilities and intelligence. The lion, courage, and grasshoppers, which they only move forward. So it's like it comes around when you need to move forward in leaps and bounds. So it's paying attention to the attributes of the animal, which you can then relate to what's going on in your world. Yeah, this is quite out there information for a lot of people, but these are the experiences I had on at this hummingbird retreat in Iquitos, and I haven't done ayahuasca since. I've just moved into doing mushrooms, which I'll touch on in my next video, and it's all been a process, really. They say with ayahuasca, you've got to have 3 journeys before you can truly connect with the plant to understand it, so that you're then connected with the earth and so forth. My last journeys coming through it was going from light to dark. Like my very first journey, I was quite a serious person, not really happy, pretending to be kind of thing, and I asked ayahuasca to be gentle with me, and I asked her to help me understand humor. And that was a loaded question, as I discovered, because while everyone else in this room is throwing up and battling and cleaning themselves out, I'm on my bed just pissing myself laughing. And it's quite interesting, because there's a snigger and there's a giggle and then there's a guffaw. There's all these different layers of humor, which I had no idea about, and most people don't. And I was like, wow, that's fucking fascinating. And as the light journeys slowly progressed through into the darker ones, that's where it got really challenging, because I refused to do the last journey, and the shaman said, no, you've got to do it. And it was just to face my own darkest angry demons. And I did it. I took 2 cups, so I was really going in for it. And I sat on my bed, and the owner kept popping into my vision. And I said, oh, hey, Jim, what's up? And then he'd poof, be gone. And I'd be like, what the fuck's he doing? And he'd come back again, and he was all in red smoke and mist and looking at me, and I was like, what the fuck do you want, Jim? And he puffed away again. And I looked over at him, and he's on his bed in the fetal position, just sleeping. And I was like, well, I can't go over and kick him because he may not know what he's doing. And I paced and paced, and I was getting angrier and angrier. And I was like, fuck, what am I going to do about this? Because I was just getting wild. And you can punch me in the face, and lock me up, whatever. But when you're in the spiritual and there's something trying to get into your head, that's quite disturbing. So I went outside, and then they closed the ceremony. Came back in, and I just went up to him and said, look, Jim, you do that again, I will fuck you up. And then I walked away, and he said, why? What happened? And he came over, and I said, no, just leave it. And he kept pressing, and then everything came in, the beast that I'd been afraid of my whole life. And it filled me up, and I grabbed him by the throat, and I said, listen, Jim, if you fucking ever do that again, I'll fucking end you. And I heard this voice in my head say, well, are you going to do it? And I was like, what? He goes, well, you going to do it or what? And I was like, no. And he goes, well, let him go. So I let him go. And I was like, wow, what the fuck was that? And I said, look, Jim, I'm so sorry. And he goes, no, this is what happens here. And I knew you'd come back in. It's a spirit that's been controlling your life through fear of your anger. And he said something happened to you which triggered this in your past. And I actually zeroed in on it. It was when I was 10, and a friend of mine pissed me off so much, I beat the living shit out of him. And I wanted to end him. Like, I didn't stop. My brother had to pull me off. And I didn't feel a thing. I just didn't feel a thing. And I walked home. My parents picked me up, looked at me strangely, said, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. It took me back up there. I was 10 years old and had to apologise, and he was just bloodied, bruised and finished. And from that day on, I was terrified of my anger. And I've since then let everyone treat me like shit. And I've just absorbed all their fucking shit. And just because I have the strength, because I was afraid if this guy came up, it would be over. And obviously later on, when I approached and had this ceremony, I come to understand that I revisited that demon, and I put him on a leash, and I took control back. So I took my power back. And ever since that moment, now I don't fear conflict, and I stand in my own truth, and I can speak what I want to speak, and I don't have any fear of pushing back now. So these kind of things can really affect your life, and you may not even know it, but you've invited these spirits in from a young age, whether it's you're 16 and you're promiscuous, or you're angry, or there's jealousy, or whatever these spirits are. You invite them in, and they can mess with you for your whole life. And so that process just helped me understand anger at a very deep level. And now it's my best friend. So if people come to me and they want to meet him, I'll let him out, I'll let him off the leash. And holding that strength has allowed me to, assimilate the darkness within myself with the light. So I'm now whole and balanced in my being, and I'm in control. And that's really what ayahuasca can do for you, because it really taps into parts of you that you're not aware of, and can show you what you need to work on and what's blocking you from living a really fucking awesome life. So yeah, that was my last journey, and I returned back to New York after that, a changed person. And understand that when you go through these kind of transformations, it takes time to assimilate. So you start to see the world through a different lens, And when you start seeing the world through a lens without fear, it's the most amazing feeling. And a lot of people don't even know that they're afraid, or they haven't dealt with the shame that's been passed on from their families and all the projection that they put on you. Anyway, this is quite a deep message. Yeah, I don't suggest everyone go and do ayahuasca, but if you wanted to take shortcuts, it's definitely a solution. And yeah, once you make that connection with nature, everything becomes a little bit more clear. And there's always a sacrifice, so in doing so, you unconsciously sacrifice the material things of life. You still enjoy them, but they're just not important to you anymore because you can see that it's just a facade, it's an illusion. And you come across people that are living in that illusion the whole time, and you just know it's just not for you. Anyway, next nugget tomorrow, maybe the next day, I'll talk about mushrooms, and we'll come to a climax of what I've actually discovered and the gifts that I've actually been gifted whilst crossing over to the spiritual realm. And anyone can do it. And the whole point of these videos is to help you understand the loops that you're in, the common, just the constant bullshit cycles that you go around. You know, you go to work 9 to 5, you go to meet the boys on the fucking Friday, have a few drinks, maybe there's party. It's all just the same shit over and over. And you want to get out of that because you're stuck. And anyway, we'll get to that. So next week, mushrooms. Over now.